Minions are the core driving force behind League. You need them to win games, you need them to play the lane phase. There have been patches where minions just haven't worked at all, and it makes the game completely unplayable. So if you can control what the minions do, you're going to have a better chance of winning the game. This is called wave management, and it is important that every single League of Legends player understands this concept. If you're looking for other guides on the basics of League of Legends, then you can check out our website, GameLeap.com, where we have courses that cover the basics of all 5 fundamental roles. We've also got champion-specific guides, so if this is something that interests you, make sure to check us out using the link in the description below. Now, when you boil everything down to the very basics, wave management can be split into 3 different types of waves. You've got a frozen wave, you have a neutral wave, and you have a pushing wave. Today, we're going to cover how you can create each and every one of these waves from any scenario. We're also going to take a look at why it's important to be using these wave mechanics to your advantage. With that being said, the number one most important thing that you need to take away from this video is a frozen wave, how to create it, what it does, and why you need to be using it in all of your games. So, what is a frozen wave? Well, a frozen wave is a controlled minion wave that has more enemy minions in it than allied minions. Now, the general rule of thumb for a frozen wave is there needs to be 3 more ranged minions in the enemy minion wave than there is in yours. So long as this rule holds true, this freeze will never break. Okay, so we know that the enemy minion wave is bigger than yours in a frozen wave. So what? What's the big deal? What is this even going to allow us to do? Well, what this allows us to do is keep the minions closer to our tower indefinitely. So long as this rule that the enemy has 3 more minions than you do stays true, this freeze will never break. This means you get to keep the minions indefinitely in a spot in front of your tower. This gives you 2 things. First of all, you get to capitalize on the safety that being close to your tower gives you. Remember, frozen waves will automatically push towards your tower, and you get to decide when it stops pushing. This means that you hold the wave just outside of your tower until your minions crash into that wave, allowing you to stay very close to your tower. The enemy can't trade on you, you can trade on them, and if you trade well enough, you can even get to a point where you can zone your lane opponent off of gold and EXP. Freezes are good when you want to stay close to your tower in order to stay safe, but they're also good when you want to play aggressive and deny the enemy laner experience and gold from getting last hits on minions. If you are allowed to play aggressive enough during a freeze, you can get them completely out of EXP range, which is really important. On the other hand, if you can force them out of lane while you're holding a freeze, they're going to miss out on a lot more minions while they're returning to the lane than they would with any other wave. This establishes the fact that freezes are really strong for keeping you safe and denying resources from the enemy team. This sounds really great if you are permanently safe and you're also denying as many resources from the enemy team. Shouldn't we always freeze then? Well, no. There's going to be strengths to the other types of waves, but we'll cover that later. The main drawback to freezing a wave is in lower elos where people don't play around wave management, it doesn't draw pressure. This means that the enemy jungler is going to be able to go pretty much anywhere else on the map, and they won't ever have to spend time in your lane. And while you're going to be very safe from jungle ganks, the rest of your team is not. Sometimes you're going to have to play in a risky manner in order to utilize your lead to alleviate pressure elsewhere on the map. Freezing will create pressure at the very highest level of play, but in all other levels of play, it does not create pressure. For this reason, freezing should be utilized to create a lead on your lane opponent, but you're going to have to then use that lead that you generate to draw pressure to yourself eventually in most of your games. Alright, so we know what a freezing wave is, we know what it does, we know the drawbacks. How do we create a freezing wave? The best and most consistent way to create a freezing wave is to simply shove your minion wave into the enemy tower. You don't want to shove too fast, you just want to slowly shove it into the enemy tower. What this does is it makes it so that your minions hit the tower, and then their minions will walk up to your minions and start hitting them while your minions are currently hitting the enemy tower. All of your minions will die, and then the next minion wave will meet closer to the enemy tower than to your tower. This makes it so that the next enemy wave will arrive to those minions faster than your wave will. This means that their minions arrive to the fight sooner, they get to start doing damage sooner, which means they kill your minions sooner. What this does is it will initiate the wave pushing back towards you with a larger enemy minion wave. We check our rules for a freeze and suddenly, ding ding ding, we've got a freeze. That is how you want to create them. Alright, moving on to the next core wave mechanic, we've got a pushing wave. A pushing wave is the opposite of a freezing wave. It is a wave where you have 3 or more additional minions on your side of the wave, and it will push slowly towards the enemy tower. The key thing here is you again need to have control of this wave. If you do not have control of this wave, then instead of it being a pushing wave, it is a frozen wave for the enemy laner. It's really important to know that wave control always stems off of who has control of the wave. You might notice that a pushing wave and a freezing wave are exactly the same, they're just for 2 different people. And the person that has control of the wave dictates whether it's pushing for one team or if it's freezing for the other team. This is the most important thing to understand about wave management. The player who has wave control gets to dictate what the minions do, so therefore they are the one in control of the wave, they're the one managing it. Alright, with that disclaimer out of the way, let's get right back to the pushing wave. So what does a pushing wave do? Well, a pushing wave is used for a few different things, but most importantly, it is used to crash minions into the tower. You can do this for different reasons, but the goal of a pushing wave is always to get the minions to the enemy tower. For this reason, you always want to see your push all the way through. You always want to ensure that the minions actually reach the tower. If they don't, you messed up your push. This is the simplest rule behind a pushing wave, but I see a lot of people mess it up, and rather frequently. You literally only have 2 conditions for a pushing wave. The first is you have more minions, and the second is that it gets to the tower. If you didn't meet the second condition, you didn't push the wave properly. So why are we going to be creating pushing waves? Unlike freezing, where your only goal is to have safety and create a lead, pushing can result in a lot of different things happening. In this video though, I'm only covering the basics, so I'm only going to cover 2 reasons why you want to push, and this is going to be about 90% of the time why you're pushing the wave. The first is to be able to leave the lane without missing out on very many minions. The second is to perform a dive. Now, after a successful push, you're going to have at the very least 1 minion wave on the enemy tower. If you create a fast push, it's going to be 1 minion wave. If you create a slow push, it's going to be a little bit more than 1 minion wave. The slower a push you pulled off, the more minions are going to be under the enemy tower. If you spend 3 waves building up the minions, allowing the minions to do the majority of the work, then you're going to have up to 2 waves crashing into the enemy tower. This will give you a lot of time to do whatever it is you're looking to do with this push. If you're just looking to get a quick recall, sometimes you just want to quickly push a wave as fast as possible and then recall, and 1 minion wave will be enough to do this. So what are the reasons why we might want to leave our lane? Well, the first one I just covered, going back to the base. Of course, you need to shop at some point during the game. And the second one is to roam to other lanes. If you find yourself in a pushing lane, a lot of the time, it's best to just finish the shove, get it into the enemy tower, and that will result in you having a certain amount of time that you're allowed to leave the lane. If you don't need the base, then a lot of the time it's better to roam to a different lane and try and impact that lane in a beneficial way. You can perform a gank, you could do something as simple as get wards, you could sweep wards. Just leaving the lane and showing some sort of pressure elsewhere on the map is always good anytime you find yourself pushing without having to recall. So those are the 2 options that you have if you want to leave your lane. However, the other reason why you would create a push is to create a dive opportunity. A diving opportunity is the aggressive play that you would use pushing for. Zoning the enemy off of EXP is the aggressive play when you're freezing, and the counterpart to it is going to be a dive. This is where you try to kill your lane opponent under their tower. The reason why you go for this is because you're able to deny more minions by doing this than you typically would be able to if you just kill them in the middle of the lane. This is because your minions are going to die to a tower faster than they're going to die to enemy minions. And if you perform a tower dive, those minions are going to be under the tower already. You don't have to waste time pushing them to the tower. So a dive effectively denies as much golden EXP from the enemy as possible. You can perform a dive solo, but more frequently it's going to be something that you're doing in tandem with your jungler. This is why you need to control your wave. Make sure that your push crashes into the enemy tower when your jungler is there. You don't want to initiate the dive or crash the wave before the jungler gets there, because then you're going to be missing out on time to perform that dive. If the dive is successful, obviously you kill the enemy without dying yourself. Alright, so what do we want to actively be doing in order to create a push? This is very simple. The only thing you have to do is just hit the minions. That's it. If you hit the minions and the enemy champion is not able to hit the minions, then your wave is slowly going to start killing their wave before it kills yours, which will then result in your minions pushing towards their tower. The key thing here is you want to make sure that the enemy champion is not also able to hit minions. We'll go over what happens when both laners are allowed to hit the wave. For now though, in order to create that push, just slowly hit minions. The harder you hit them or the faster you hit them, the more damage you're going to deal to them, which means your wave is going to push faster. The less you hit them, the more your wave is going to slowly push and build up. How fast or slow you want to push is going to be determined by how long you want to have to do a certain something. This is either the dive or leaving your lane for a base or a roam. If you think you need a lot of time to, say, roam to another lane, then you might want to initiate as slow of a push as possible to crash as many minions into the enemy tower as possible. Alright, so with the basics of freezing and pushing out of the way, let's talk about the last core wave mechanic, and this is a neutral wave. A neutral wave is exactly what it sounds like. It's neither pushing nor freezing to either side. A neutral wave most commonly occurs when neither side has full wave control and they are still fighting for it. If a fight could go either way, then chances are the wave is going to be in a neutral spot. It also refers to when there are equal amounts of minions on either side of the wave and it's not pushing in either direction. The most important thing to understand is you never want to be in a neutral wave. It's almost always better to have either a pushing wave or a freezing wave for various different reasons. These are going to allow more plays to happen than a neutral wave. A neutral wave is always going to require attention. Neutral waves are commonly just a product of the game. Remember that you're not going to just start out the game winning your lane. There's going to be a struggle for power one way or the other initially as the game starts. Once it's clear who is winning the lane or has wave control, then neutral waves pretty much stop happening. But until that point, it's going to be a neutral wave. Neutral waves can also occur during or close to power spikes. For example, a wave can turn into a neutral wave when both champions are coming up to level 6 very soon. So now that we've kind of talked about the fact that you're not the one creating the neutral wave, it's more of a product of how the lane is going, let's talk about what you want to do when you find yourself in a neutral wave. The first thing you want to do is just analyze which way that wave is pushing. It's best to just wait to hit the minions until you're sure it's pushing towards you or pushing towards the enemy. Once you determine which way it's pushing, then you decide what to do with that wave. If it pushes towards you, then you can decide to go ahead and freeze it, and if it pushes towards the enemy, then you want to make sure that you're starting to hit that wave so you can push it all the way into the enemy tower, crash it, and that will give you a wave that starts pushing back towards you. If you are in a scenario where you're coming up on an important power spike, say level 2, level 3, or level 6, these are the most common ones, then you might want to start hitting minions even if you don't know exactly what the wave is doing yet. In these specific cases, it's more important to just get the level than it is to manage the wave in a way where you could possibly freeze it. Just to reiterate, you never really want to be in a neutral wave, and your main goal is just to get out of it and figure out what kind of wave is going to be created after the neutral wave starts pushing in either direction. If you can look to freeze it, then by all means go for a freeze, but if you're going to be forced to push, then start committing to that. Now, there will be some scenarios where you are forced to create a neutral wave. The most common one is when the enemy laner pushes a slow push into your tower and then goes for a recall. Now, during this recall timer, you won't be able to kill all of their minions quickly and kill the next wave to get your wave to crash into the enemy tower. What you do have time to do, however, is kill the wave that's currently under your tower as quickly as possible. You don't really need to be super focused on the last hits. You just want to make sure that your minions don't crash into their minions before their minions die. If you can manage to kill all of the minions under your tower before your minions get there, then that means that a neutral wave will occur afterwards. This allows you to immediately recall and match that player's base coming back to the lane at the same time with the same items, or a relatively close amount of gold spent on items. If you're not going to be able to kill the enemy minion wave under your tower in time, what will instead happen is the enemy will have a freeze, and while you're in the base, too many of the enemy minions are going to die, so you're going to have a bit of an EXP deficit because of that. This is why it's better to create a neutral wave here instead of just letting your lane opponent have a freeze. Remember, you never want the enemy laner to utilize freezing against you, and you also never want to be dove. So if it looks like these two things might become a reality, then in these instances, it's better to create a neutral wave than for those two things to occur. Again, a neutral wave will not benefit you, but you can create one in order to prevent bad things from happening to you. And that's about all there is to the basics of wave management. Hopefully after this video, you know exactly what each and every one of these waves are, what they do, and how to create them. If you enjoyed this video and you're looking for more macro guides on League of Legends, then you can check out our website, GameLeap.com. Over there, we've got a playlist that covers all of the basics. On top of that, I'm posting 10 to 20 guides every single week to our website. I'm covering both champion-specific guides as well as guides on the 5 fundamental roles. So if that is something that interests you, then make sure to check us out using the link in the description below. As always, I'm Panther. I hope you learned something valuable, and I will see you in the next one.